Okay, so we talked about ego depletion, and so now we are going to go into a few explanations of the ego depletion effects and the reasoning for why this is necessary is the original theory has been criticized in terms of it doesn't really tell us the full story or doesn't get into too much detail about the willpower resource, right? Just tells us that whatever this magical thing is, that gets depleted sometimes. But we need some more information. And so a couple of these theories take some stabs at more detail of what is going on here. And so the first I want to talk about is called the process model. This is probably the most popular. And so with the process model, the main point is that after you spend a certain amount of time engaging in self-control for your long-term goals, you decide to shift towards indulgence or shift towards your short-term goals. So you don't always just stay with your long-term ones. We have this shift in attention um, towards this indulgence. So we'll see the basis of this is that we start with shifts in motivation. So we see reduced motivation in to exert control and increased motivation to act on impulse. And that's when the shift in attention comes in. So these two things kind of work together. And then we'll see the reduced attention to cues signaling control and increased attention to reward. And so what I mean with this intention, these attention points, is that usually we've talked about goal shielding, right? So when we're focused on a long-term goal, we'll block out things, we'll block out the cheesecake. Or if we see the cheesecake, we'll get the cue of, oh, I have this long-term goal. So I shouldn't be focused on the cheesecake right now, I should be focused on my goal. But when we have this shift in attention that is theorized by the process model, we shift from those kind of cues to cues about reward. So it's no longer don't eat the cheesecake. I need to focus on this long-term goal. It's ooh, that cheesecake is looking pretty nice. Maybe I should go grab that and try a piece of it. And this is just a quick demonstration of the process model that provides some evidence that this should be at least relatively accurate. Is this gets into more neuropsych, which we in here don't talk about in depth too much, but basically we're talking about event related potentials here and how they can show control. And when people make a mistake, we see what's called an error related negativity, which is these peaks here. There. So that's what we're calling an error related negativity. And we see that that doesn't pop up when a correct answer is made, right? Like the peak, there's a little bit of a peak there, but it's much less intense than with the error related negativity that occurs when we make an error. And now looking at part C here, we see that or a little bit of background, basically participants were either in a control condition or they were told to suppress emotions, right? We saw how that can look in the last lecture. And so that should take up resources. And we see that the error-related negativity or the ERN is reduced for those who suppressed. And so the idea is that they had some depletion there, and now they shift away from these self-control cues, and so they don't get as much of that notification of an error because their attention has shifted. Interestingly, at least initially, the main theory was that, or the main argument was that what this magical willpower thing is just glucose. And so when we use self-control, We're using up glucose, and then we start to run out of that, and we feel depleted. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And there's some evidence here in this study that maybe depletion is more subjective and in our heads rather than an actual physical thing. And so basically, in this study, participants were given either an easy or a difficult task. And so that's the low or high depletion here. High depletion should lead to, or sorry, a difficult task should lead to higher depletion. And then they're also given one of three various feedbacks. They're either told that, oh, this task you did actually replenishes your willpower and it doesn't deplete it. In a different condition, they were told, oh, this task really depletes your willpower. And so after doing that task, you should feel depleted. And then there was a control condition with no feedback. And what we see here is going to focus on these bars in the middle here for the depleted feedback. It seems that perceived and not actual feedback then determines performance and determines like actual feelings of depletion. And so when in this low condition, so when they had the easy task, shouldn't be depleted, but they were told that they had been depleted, they didn't do very well in this next task, right? So they actually acted as if they were depleted versus those who completed a difficult task and were told that they were depleted. They did pretty well at this task. And so the idea is that they maybe actually felt this depletion after the task and they were told they were depleted. So they thought, okay, now I'm feeling this and I really have to double down on my effort to make sure that I don't do poorly on this next task. So just some evidence here that it might be more subjective than physical. Another idea within this topic is that of a threshold, and this gets at that the reason for a shift in motivation is that it's not adaptive to inhibit temptations forever. And so we have this threshold that helps us balance when we should be inhibiting temptations and then maybe when we should indulge sometimes. And so with some diets, right, especially some of the ones I'm reading about today are pretty intense, and it actually would be very unhealthy to stay on these diets for a long period of time. And so indulging at some point is actually a good thing. And what we're looking for is more just moderated calories as opposed to staying on this extreme diet forever that will also eventually not be unhealthy. Additionally, you can think about this in terms of if you're studying for a test, there's a certain level where you want to study a decent amount, right? And that's going to help with performance and it's going to benefit you in certain ways. But when you start staying up all night every night to study, then it becomes maladaptive. You're not sleeping, you're not taking time for yourself or anything else. So basically, this threshold idea gets at that there's a balance that we try to find, and that's where we have this shift from long-term to short-term goals to try and find this balance of proper and our best, maybe proper isn't the right word, but our best functioning. And so, yeah, this threshold then determines when our self-control for long-term goals should end, and failing to do that and showing self-control after we've gone past this threshold could actually be bad for us. And this is that journey game. We talked about this a long time ago in one of the first couple lectures, but this was research done in the lab that I'm currently in. And basically, it was this journey game. And as you're going along this game, you find different resources. There's either carrots or there's donuts. Carrots are obviously they'll give you less energy for that time being, and donuts will give you more. And what was manipulated was either a harsh or a not harsh environment. So low harshness, there's plenty of resources, donuts and carrots everywhere. High harshness, the donuts start to be pretty limited. And so the reason for me bringing this up again is it seems like our environment moderates where our threshold is and where moderates the adaptiveness for having a higher or low threshold, right? Because in the high harshness condition, there's threshold for self-control, and avoiding donuts should be pretty low. As we see here, survival probability went up quite a bit when those donuts were eaten because there just weren't very many. Versus in the low harshness condition where these resources are everywhere, then eating all the donuts can become actually maladaptive, as we see here. And so self-control becomes important to survival. Getting at kind of a similar idea here, but a little bit different, is that this control theory, this gets at, we can kind of think about this in terms of those negative feedback loops we've talked about in the past, where we're consistently monitoring progress. And with control theory, this the theory here is that if we are below our desired progress towards a goal, which is this line here, if we're below where we want to be for that, we should increase effort to hopefully improve our progress towards this goal. But as we've talked about before, if our goal seems easy at the moment and we seem to be doing a really good job, then maybe we've surpassed this threshold and we can coast a bit. Maybe now we can have that cheesecake, right? Because we have been doing so well in our diet goal. We're seeing the progress that we want to see. So it feels okay to indulge a little bit when we're up here and are exceeding the expected progress towards our goal. And I guess we can kind of think about this in terms of a goal in terms of a car going uphill or downhill. So if we're below our desired progress, that's kind of like the car going uphill. We have to hit the gas pedal, put some energy into this, versus if we're at the top of the hill, we're looking back, our progress seems to be really good. We're starting to go down a bit, then we can just coast, right? We don't need to press the gas pedal and coast a bit and put less energy into that. Another variable that seems to influence this threshold idea and when we're going to put effort into this focal long-term goal is our expectancy of that goal. So we've talked about these expectancies a bit in the past. And so we see that shifts are most likely to occur either when, and shifts in attention, either when the goal under consideration is very likely to be successful or when it's very unlikely to be successful. So looking at this chart here, the focal goal, right? Seems like the focus for that goal is low at both the low and high goal expectancy, right? Versus it's higher at moderate goal expectancy, but at low and high, our probability of then focusing on other goals and maybe doing things like indulging a bit or just whatever goals we might have, that's going to be more likely when our focal goal is at low or high expectancy. So if we're thinking about this in terms of our diet, if we either think that there's no chance that we're going to reach our diet goals, or if things are going great, it's really easy, we're going to shift our attention to other things, maybe social goals. Instead of focusing on the diet, we're going to go out to dinner with friends, be social or something like that, whatever the other goal is. This is just a quick demonstration of that idea. This is an actual study getting at this expectancy idea. So in this study, participants could choose between putting effort into trying to win a 100-meter sprint, or so that was the focal goal here, or there was kind of a side goal of gaining some extra money, which occurred by spending hours working at a museum. And what was manipulated in the study was whatever the training progress actually was. They were told either there's a 0% chance you're going to win this race, or you have a decent percent chance of winning this race if you keep putting in effort, or you're going to win so easily. You're doing way better than everybody else. And We see that in this result here, participants were most likely to put in effort to this focal race goal if there was a moderate chance of winning. And this just gets at the overarching theme here, which is with all this process model and threshold information, which is strategic use of self-control and goal pursuit. All right, and that's it for this video. Next, we'll get into some self-control strategies.